continue on in surveying Calvin's Institutes by looking at what you find next in his Institutes. Well, in so many of the reformers, they were writing to confront what Calvin says in his Institutes as men bent out of shape. Or another way to put it, men who are staking their hope in a religion, in an ideology, in something other than Christ. And he says this about men bent out of shape. In short, the object on which all to a man are bent is to keep their kingdom safe or their belly filled. Not one gives even the smallest sign of sincere zeal. So he says for these men bent out of shape, and he's talking about the ruling priests and bishops and pope of the then Roman Catholic Church, that they discerned, and you can see this if you read Luther's 95 Theses or study a lot of what he wrote about his contemporary priests. They're getting drunk, they're sleeping with prostitutes, they're essentially using money people are giving to the church to indulge themselves and to keep their own kingdom safe or their belly filled, which is another way to say not just their natural appetites, but their unnatural, lustful appetites satisfied as well. And Calvin references a fairly well-known verse out of Jeremiah to talk about what the institutional Roman Catholic Church was doing to falsely come against the Reformation as it was seeking to bring people back to the source, Jesus Christ as presented in God's Word. And so one of the passages he references, I'll read for us, is Jeremiah 2:13. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. That's what he's accusing the church of the day of doing. They've forsaken the living God, and they've created a counter religion, a superficial religion, another form of hope or belief that has a very thin Christian veneer over it. And the church is mad, and Calvin and others are holding their position and saying, no. I know you guys don't like what we're saying, but you're going to another well. We have the gospel. We have God's word. You are men bent out of shape. You've hewn out for yourself cisterns that are broken and cracked, and they're bleeding through. And so the criticism is basically this for the Roman Catholic leadership at that time. And we could say the same, I think, now. Not much has changed since Vatican II. What they're saying is, look, you're feeding off your people. You're feeding off your people in a negative way, in a bad way, because you're not feeding on Christ. And you're coming at us like we're the problem. No. You're the problem. You're trying to keep your own kingdom safe, and you're trying to keep your bellies filled. Why? Because you've lost your first and real hope, Christ, who is the living water. You're feeding on the people because you're not feeding on Christ. You're spiritually abusing the people because you're not under shepherds of Christ. And this will come across as harsh in our own day and age, but Calvin didn't pull any punches. You're under shepherds of your father, the devil. You're under shepherds of the Antichrist, who he and Luther would say was the Pope of the day. Not exclusively whoever was in power at that time, but as sort of a running theme of types of Antichrist. So much of what Calvin is writing that you'll see in the Institutes might sound controversial or harsh, but understand what he's doing. He is a shepherd under Christ defending the flock against bent men who, because they're not feeding on Christ spiritually, are feeding off the people that they're supposed to protect and using and abusing them to satisfy their own lust and to protect their own kingdoms. Well, thanks again for listening to this installment of Walking Through Calvin's Institutes. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.